Welcome inside the RX Muscle Studios in New York for another episode of Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave. We are back after a week hiatus. Glad to be back with you. If you're watching us live on our YouTube channel, it is a big day here on RX Muscle. In about 45 to 50 minutes or so, we are going to have a special episode of Iron Debate with four-time Mr. Olympia Jay Cutler. Now, you got to see him on Live With about a week and a half ago, and now you're going to get him again on Iron Debate. We're going to be joined also by Chris Aceto and John Romano, so you're not going to want to miss that. And of course, we mentioned the week-long hiatus. The big reason for that was the big news out of last week. Dave, congratulations to you and Amanda on the birth of your baby boy, Logan.
Yes, he has finally arrived. Logan Alexander Palumbo, 7.1 pounds. Natural birth, 2 hours she cranked that little baby out. And he's home and he's eating and pooping and doing a lot of sleeping. And we like that. We like when he sleeps because it gives us a little peace and quiet. But, it breaks up the schedule. I get up to go to the bathroom every 2 hours anyway. So when I get up now, I got to feed him, or she feeds him and we change him and we back to sleep. So everything's back, little by little, starting to get our routine ironed out. But he was a blessing in our life. It's probably the best thing I have ever done or created in my life, that's for sure. And, hopefully he'll be doing commentary by at least next year. We're working on getting him to speak either in English and or Spanish so that he can do a bilingual show. I think he's going to be doing a radio show with Johnny when he's 2. So, we got big plans for baby Logan.
And he plans to be on stage in the next couple of years.
I don't know about stage, but he might be giving out trophies maybe. Okay. You never know. He might be, he's about the same size as our muscle puppets. So he might, a lot of people say, you should get a baby Logan puppet. I said, well, we don't need to. He's already the size of the puppet. So he might make some appearances on a future episode of Muscle Puppets. But I have to say that I am super excited to get Jay Cutler here tonight because a lot of people don't realize when Jay was competing, he was kind of very, low key and didn't really, make waves or anything like that. But he's got very strong opinions. And, when I interviewed him on Live With for that over an hour a couple weeks ago, people loved that interview with him. I could tell he had a lot of strong opinions and opinions he wanted to basically verse. And he told me he'd like to get on the show. So when he asked me, I was shocked. So I contacted him this week, and it's going to be a good episode. We get some great topics to talk about. It'll be interesting to see if him and Chris Aceto agree or disagree on topics. And once again, this might be one of the best iron debates of all time.
So once again, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on RxMuscle.com. Iron Debate with four-time Mr. Olympia Jay Cutler. 30-minute question and answer with Dave Palumbo. If you want to join us, you can join us on the Muscle Central Forum on RxMuscle.com, on our official Facebook page, or on our YouTube channel. If you're watching us live on YouTube, you can ask your questions on the comment box on the right-hand side of the video player, on our Instagram page, official_RxMuscle, or you can tweet your questions using hashtag AskDave. Let's go to Lausta86. This show is destined to fail. Dave, how many weeks out do you put Tren A in your prep, and do you increase as the show gets closer?
I'm not really one of these guys that likes to increase. I believe that steady state dosages are really what give you the best bang for your buck, so to speak. I think that it's a lot of guys, will crescendo up to a show, not necessary. I usually start out about 8 weeks out with 100 milligrams of trenbolone acetate every other day. And then the only thing I do change is the last 5 days, I'll go every day. And that seems to be plenty. There's a lot of androgens in trenbolone and the acetate version, because it's so fast acting, they hit you real hard and fast. So if you take too much of that stuff, I know guys taking 1,000 milligrams a week, they're out of their minds, because 100 milligrams every other day is a lot. We used to back in the day take 50 milligrams every other day, and that was strong enough. Remember, high androgens mean increased blood pressure, increased anxiety, harder to fall asleep, increased aggression. You got to watch out. John Romano calls it the girlfriend or the relationship ender, and it can be. So you got to be very, very careful while you're on trenbolone.
Let's go to Richie Rose. Dave, I hate this show so much, I have to get my estrogen check afterwards so I don't freak out like Jimmy Pelletier. Best off-season cycle in terms of compounds and duration?
I've discussed this before, but I obviously testosterone is always a good base drug. You got to use that. Anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per week, I feel is ideal. In addition to that, what I like to do is alternate and move around different other compounds, what we would call the anabolic compounds like equipoise, DECA, trenbolone. These are strong compounds, strong anabolics that really work well with testosterone. And what I like to do is every 6 to 8 weeks, switch the anabolic. So I might do testosterone, 300, 350 milligrams every other day with 200 milligrams of DECA every other day for 6 or 8 weeks. Then I might switch to testosterone with trenbolone. Either the acetate or the enanthate version is fine every other day. And then I might switch to DECA and testosterone every other day. And sometimes when I start a mass cycle off with guys who have been off for a period of time, we might even start with a little Dianabol at 30 milligrams a day just to kind of get the ball rolling, so to speak. But that's pretty much how I work. And then I'll go anywhere from 18 to 24 weeks in a row usually before we give them a break, or we switch into contest mode. And that seems to work real well. Obviously, stacking that with some growth hormone, I like to use anywhere from 3 to 5 IUs a day, I think is ideal, with the most ever being 6. And then that's even pushing it. I don't think that you really need more than 4 or 5 IUs per day.
Let's go to Hermit Snake. Is Kai Green's biggest weakness his chest and forearms? If not, what are his weaknesses in your opinion?
I don't think that Kai Green has too many weaknesses, to be honest with you, other than the fact that maybe he's too big. I don't know. I mean, because he's got a very short torso, whereas from his chest down to his waist, and I think when he's too big, it balloons his stomach out a little bit. And I don't think it's a gut issue. It's just that he's got too much muscle. So I like him a little on the smaller side. As far as everything else goes, I don't think he really has any glaring weaknesses. I don't think you can really say, wow, that's a weak body part of him. Sometimes his chest may be a little flat if he's not carved up enough. But by and far, he really has no weaknesses. Maybe his biggest weakness is his mindset when he gets to the Olympia, because he seems to have trouble bringing his best conditioning on that show.
What are your opinions of Rich Piana's new series going 350 plus pounds?
He's not going to make it to 350 pounds. If he is, he'll probably die first. Okay, I think it's kind of silly. I didn't hear that new stipulation by him, but I don't see why he would want to be 350 pounds. Is that really what he said?
That's according to our users, on our YouTube channel. Let's go to the next question, and this one from Style X, and he wants to talk about WWE wrestlers like Triple H, The Rock. They work with diet gurus like yourself. So he wants to know how natural is a WWE, and then he goes on to ask, in your opinion, is a physique like John Cena's naturally achievable considering all the traveling and performing with almost no rest?
I'll tell you one thing about the WWE. You got to remember, they're a publicly traded company, and they are drug tested by an independent third-party source, meaning that the WWE doesn't test their own athletes. A third party tests their athletes. Okay. Now, the difference between the WWE and professional sports like baseball and football is that they're not a sport, and it's not illegal to take hormone replacement. So these guys can't take anabolic steroids, but they can take a dose of testosterone replacement if it's prescribed by a doctor and monitored by a doctor. So I think a lot of the guys that are over 40 years old especially are on some kind of hormone replacement. Not a lot. I would hardly call it a steroid cycle, but in their venue, because in their performing venue, that is allowed. So I think that they're not as natural as they expect the athletes in terms of football and baseball and all the professional sports to be, but they're under the care of a doctor, and they're also on hormone replacement levels. So I think that, and not all of them are, I think that some of them are, and they have to be over 40 years of age.
Newton Chavan wants to know, Dave, what do you think about all these athletes using Adobe Photoshop and other ways to alter their photos for their social media channels?
People have been cheating on pictures since they began. Per Banal, who was probably one of the best photographers in the entire bodybuilding and fitness industry, always photoshopped his covers for Muscular Development back in the day when he worked for them, and he's probably doing it for Flex Magazine now as well. He used to increase the arm size and just make he was a master with Photoshop. So people have been doing this from the end of time. You think that the magazine pictures or magazine covers you see on People and all these other magazines, Vogue, you think those aren't doctored up? They all are. So guys doctoring the pictures on Facebook and social media, who cares? I mean, you know what? I saw a picture of Rami, and this is a notorious story, where he was completely out of shape, and then someone put a filtered picture of him on Instagram, and he looked like he won 6 Olympias. He was so good. So people do it. It's a sensationalistic thing. I wish they didn't do it, because I like to see the real thing. When I put up pictures of like my snakes, and I take pictures in the office of my animals and fish, I never put a filter on them, because I think the natural, state of how they look is important, because I want to really depict, especially if I'm selling a snake to someone, I want them to see what the snake really looks like. I don't want to deceive them in any way.
You're watching Ask Dave on RxMuscle.com, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com for the best overall question of the episode and the best I hate the show. You will walk away with Nitralized Pre-Workout by Species Nutrition. Reminder, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Iron Debate with Jay Cutler right here on RxMuscle.com. We go to Jonathan. Dave, if someone had a hernia, a mild one, but still wanted to lift, which exercises are okay and which should be stayed away from?
It's a loaded question, because there's a lot of different types of hernias. There's an inguinal hernia, which is like kind of under your scrotum as a male, which are harder to lift with, because those tend to be the ones that hurt when you're straining, intra-abdominal, bearing down on your intra-abdominal, on your abdominals, and creating or increasing intra-abdominal pressure. Then you have your femoral hernia, which is kind of on the front of your leg, which is really not a big deal. And then you have your belly button hernia that people get, the what is it called? The umbilical hernia. And like I said, everyone experiences different. I had an umbilical hernia for years. It just was cosmetic. It didn't affect my lifting at all. So if it's not painful, it doesn't hurt, and it's not like your intestines aren't popping through and getting kinked off, you could lift any way you want. Don't worry about it. It's not going to make it worse. Especially if you're planning on getting it fixed at some point, who cares? So they'll fix it a little bigger one. If it does hurt and you're in a lot of pain when you're lifting, then I wouldn't do lifts that hurt that. To me, if you have a hernia that's impeding your way of life, so to speak, and limiting you, get it fixed.
Dave, your thoughts, this question from Richie Rose, on B12 injections.
And I've talked about this before. Vitamin B12 has a unique absorption route. Most, water-soluble and regular vitamins, you pop them orally, and they get absorbed someplace in your intestinal tract, whether it be in your stomach or your small intestine, they get absorbed. B12 has a weird absorption route. It has to complex with something in the stomach known as intrinsic factor. If that intrinsic factor B12 doesn't complex with each other, you don't absorb B12. Assuming it does complex with intrinsic factor, okay, as it goes through your colon, your intestinal tract, now when it gets to the end of your small intestines, there's a very small portion where that intrinsic factor, vitamin B12 complex, gets absorbed. If it misses that, or let's say you have a little colitis there or something that's not working right, you could go and become vitamin B12 deficient. Now, because the body realizes it's hard to absorb vitamin B12, it's the only water-soluble vitamin that could actually be stored in the liver for up to 6 months. So you don't have to absorb it every day. The problem is that, when you're working out and you're creating new red blood cells and you high protein synthesis going on, it's easier to deplete B12. And if you're not orally absorbing it at optimal levels, you could become deficient. If you are deficient, it usually leads to something known as pernicious anemia, or a low red blood cell count. Your red blood cells can't produce enough. You get a little bit of anemic. You don't have as much energy, as much strength in the gym. So in those people, it's prudent to take a shot of B12. Now, some guys take shots of vitamin B12 just because they feel that it increases their appetite, their feeling of well-being. There's nothing negative about taking B12. Back in the day when we would take Winstrol V injections, and the old Winstrol was in these big 30cc bottles, and it was called Winstrol V because it was veterinary. And it hurt like hell when you'd put it in. So what we would do is we would draw a cc of the Winstrol up, put half cc of vitamin B12 into the same syringe, shake it up, and when you'd inject it, it wouldn't hurt. So I took tons of B12 back in the day, bottles and bottles of it, and I never had any negative, type of things. Your body only really absorbs what it needs. Obviously, putting it into the bloodstream is going to make the absorption of it much more, efficient. But there's no harm to it, but probably most people don't need it.
You're watching Ask Dave, 30-minute question and answer television show. All your questions, supplementation, diet, training, any questions about IFBB pros and competitors, Dave Palumbo is here to answer you. Sponsored by Species Nutrition. Once again, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on this channel, Iron Debate with 4-time Mr. Olympia, Jay Cutler. We now go to John McGovern, congratulations on your newborn. With the Arnold so close, does anyone have a chance to challenge Jose Raymond in the 212 division?
You know, I think Hide Yamagishi has a very good shot at him. I don't know if Eduardo Correa is in the lineup.
He is not. It's Gassis Nino, Charles Dixon, David Henry, Kyung Won Kang, Corey Matthews, John Meadows, and Angel Manuel Rangel Vargas.
Yeah, I think that the toughest challenge for Jose is going to be Hide. The advantage of Hide Yamagishi is that he's a little taller than Jose. He's aesthetically, a little nicer because his physique is spread out, but he's not as big and thick. If Jose comes in conditioning spot on, no one beats him in that lineup. However, that's not always the case. Sometimes people come a little off. If he does come in a little off and Hide's at his best, he can certainly be beaten. But I think it's Jose's show to lose, and I know Jose's watching because he watches all the coverage. I am all for you. I got all my chips in on Jose Raymond for this one.
Ronnie Barnes, question, Whey isolate or BCAAs post-workout?
Look, post-work, BCAAs, branched-chain amino acids, are only 3 amino acids. And in some formulas, you might have a couple others sprinkled in there as well. Nothing can duplicate Mother Nature. Mother Nature made protein a certain way with a certain ratio of amino acids in it. And all animal sources of protein, whether it be whey protein, chicken, meat, fish, all has this array of amino acids with high spiking levels of branch chains in the protein source already. There's a reason why they're in there in the ratios they are. And that's why they are assimilated so well when we eat solid foods. Now, the advantage post-workout is we want to get the food in as quickly as possible. So eating a steak post-workout, while it will solve the problem and help with repair, it's not going to do it quickly. So whey isolate is rapidly absorbed and digested and brought into the bloodstream very quickly and into the muscle cells. So you want a whole source of protein. Most of the studies that have been done that show how you can maximize, recovery post-workout is with a 30-gram dose of whey isolate. Actually, it's with a 30-gram dose of whey concentrate. That's the studies they do. But a whey isolate would be even better because of the lack of lactose in there, the better absorption of the protein. Taking a branch change, just a couple amino acids after you train, ain't going to do nothing, to be honest with you. It might tell your body start repairing muscle, but there's nothing there to do it with. So you use a whey protein isolate.
Ahmad Esmat wants to know, Dave, what do you think the value of the vacuum pose is? And for example, what if Cedric McMillan could do a vacuum? How much would it benefit him?
Well, the vacuum pose is very impressive. Think Frank Zane when you see the vacuum. That's who I think of. But all the guys back in the day, Arnold did a great vacuum too. Did that vacuum pose? Franco Columbo, Jose has a good vacuum pose. So it just adds another dimension because it makes your waist look smaller. It makes the upper body look bigger. It creates a better illusion. It gives that nice lines. Pretty much anyone can hit a vacuum pose if they work on it hard enough. Not everyone is as impressive when they hit the vacuum pose. So you got to kind of evaluate your physique and see if it's something that you should work on. But I've never seen a bad vacuum pose on stage. In other words, I've never seen a guy go from, hey, he looks really good, and then he hits a vacuum pose and he looks worse. Never happens. They only get better. So to me, it's an advantage. It makes you look more aesthetic. Cedric kind of hits a vacuum pose, not a crazy one, but he already has such a big flowing structure. When he hits his abdominal, his front double bicep pose, he's very impressive already. I'd like to see a nice crazy vacuum on him. I think it could only add to his to the way he looked. Chris Cormier used to hit a great vacuum pose as well. So look at the physiques through time, and the guys who hit the vacuums definitely raise themselves up a level.
Big Jai or Jolly wants to know, who's the most gifted bodybuilder athlete you've ever seen? Most genetically gifted body?
Ronnie Coleman, without a doubt. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about his Olympia wins, but I was guest posing with him once, which was an honor for me, in Fargo, North Dakota, of all places. And we were at the Outback Steakhouse after we both guest posed. I was like 300 pounds and he was like 3 whatever. And we were sitting there and he was actually, and I've told this story before, he said to me, he goes, "How do you get so damn hard?" He's saying this to me. And he's got this sleeveless shirt on. His arms had to be, it was off season, had to be like 30 inches they looked like. Like I had big arms. My arms were like 22 and a half, 23 inches. His arms looked like they were 28 inches. They were huge and they were so separated. I mean, and they just were very impressive. I'm like, Ronnie, how the hell did you get those arms? I was born with the conditioning. You were born with the arms. It's genetics. There's a lot of genetic components. I think, to me, Ronnie Coleman is one of the most impressive people up close. Greg Kovacs was probably the biggest guy I'd ever been around, at over 400 pounds. And that's impressive in itself. But Ronnie was impressive because of the size and convolutions of his muscles, and just he in my mind, he's the greatest bodybuilder of all time.
StyleX, Dave, your tips on tightening the waistline.
When you say tightening, I'm assuming that you mean, getting rid of fat, and that's just diet and cardio and fat burners. If you mean bringing the size of the waist down once the fat is gone, there's really not much you can do. Although a lot of people nowadays are using these waist trainers or corsets, and they definitely seem to train the waist down in size. They're not comfortable to wear. Who knows what the long-term health benefits of restricting the size of your waist is and kind of crunching your organs in, but putting aside the health problems, that's the only thing that will make your waist smaller. But most people, when they ask me, how do I get my waist smaller, are referring to getting rid of body fat. And that's just diet. Finding a coach, doesn't have to be me, it could be anyone, who's going to give you a solid plan that you can work with, that works with your body type, and that you feel comfortable with, that's going to enable you to diet off that body fat to bring in what's ever under there. And we don't know a lot of times what's under there. I've seen guys that have been fat their whole life. You diet them down and they have a small waist. They didn't even know they had a small waist because they had never lost the weight. So once again, get your waist smaller, sound diet.
Let's go to Toned with TJ. This show sucks so bad, I'd rather hug a cactus naked. Dave, have you ever been in a situation with a client that no matter what the hell you did, you couldn't seem to get the fat off? What did you do in a situation like that when you were adamant that they were truly following the plan? Did you provide a refund, take a diet break and cardio break if time allowed to start again? What happens in that instance?
Well, very rarely is it just bad luck that someone's not losing weight. Because I've worked with people. Usually when you're doing everything, you've maxed cardio, you've maxed fat burners, they're eating no food and they're not losing weight. I usually do the opposite of what logic would tell you to do. I feed them more. I'll give them a week where I'm up feeding them, and then I put them back on the diet. And a lot of times that will work. Most of the time, though, I will make them do what's called a food diary. I will make them write down every single morsel of food, liquid, anything, whatever anything they put into their mouth, I want it on that paper, and I watch it. I look at it for about 2-3 days, and then I make a determination what's going on. A lot of times I find they're using barbecue sauce, they're using sugar-free ketchup, which is not carb-free. I catch so many crazy mistakes that people didn't even know they were making when they do that, and when they do a good job on the food diary. And a lot of times, sometimes people have been dieting too hard. A lot of times people have thyroid issues. I send them for blood work. So you got to check every variable. I don't think I've encountered one case where a person couldn't lose weight, given they were doing everything that they were saying they were doing. A lot of times I know that people have told me they were doing what they were saying, but they were lying. Because you can see in a person's face. If the face is all bloated and puffy, it means they're not following the diet. It means they're cheating. And I have clients that follow the diet 2-3 days a week, and then 2-3 days they don't follow the diet. And then they don't want to know why they don't get results. So you got to be a private investigator. You almost got to be like Sherlock Holmes, ask the right questions, find out what they're doing. And then if that doesn't work, I try to find friends of theirs and ask them what's going on. And a lot of times the friends will be like, oh, they cheat, And so, once again, it's not impossible that there's an anomaly out there, but I haven't really encountered one yet.
Phoenix Ocho Cinco wants to know, Dave, your favorite dish from Outback Steakhouse.
I usually have 2 different dishes I'll order there when I go there. One, I usually get the salmon a lot of times if I'm not in a steak mood. And I'll get that with the baked potato. With the sweet potato. A lot of times I get shrimp on the Barbie to start. Although, I'll tell you, they have a great tuna tataki there. Or I think it's called tuna tataki. It's like a tuna appetizer, like a seared tuna appetizer. I usually get that. I love their fillets. Their Victoria center cut fillet, terrific. Always get the sweet potato. I leave the accoutrements on the side usually, so I can add my own little butter if I want to. And what else do I get with that? And then it usually comes with a salad, and I love the salad. I usually hold the croutons and light on the cheese.
Let's go to Chris H. I was told that taking anti-inflammatory medicines for muscle aches after working out might stop muscle growth. Is this true?
Well, you got to understand what happens post-workout. You know, after you finish a training session, you create a lot of inflammation. That inflammation from the breakdown of muscle tissue is an initiator or is a cell signaler to tell the cells to start repairing themselves. If you constantly are popping, you know, Motrin or ibuprofen, stuff that's going to inhibit inflammation in the body, that can inhibit that signal, and it could certainly reduce your body's ability to build muscle. Throughout my career, I always tried to stay off of, you know, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories as a bodybuilder because I just felt like I wasn't growing when I would take them because people took them liberally back in the 90s. And when I stopped taking them, I realized, you know, that I grew better. And then I did some research, and then I realized, you know, you could accomplish the same thing anti-inflammation-wise by taking enough fish oil, you know, enough vitamin E that you can when you're taking, you know, non-steroidals. So, you know, I'm on, you know, from when I take Omega-Lyze, I'm getting, you know, 3 grams of fish oil, 2,600 milligrams of primrose oil every day. And to me, that's a great anti-inflammatory right there. When I go get my C-reactive protein levels checked on blood work, which is a measure of total body inflammation, mine are low. So I have to believe it's the natural supplementation that's doing that.
Let's go to Ashraf Chukri. Dave, is hitting the muscle twice a week good for muscle growth? P.S. Natural. Thanks.
I never liked the 2 times a week, you know, train each body part twice a week regimen. I know Ronnie Coleman did it for years, but he's a freak. When I would train each body part twice, I would first of all be mentally exhausted from having to think about trying to train each body part twice a week. And then I was also physically never really felt recovered. So when I would get to the workout, I always was like, oh, we're doing chest again? We're doing legs again? It was just too much for me. And when I stopped doing that, because that was the conventional 80s, 90s way of doing it, I grew way better. And then I started reading more about Mike Mentzer and Dorian Yates, the high-intensity training, where they took more days of rest, less training, and that worked well for me as well. So for me, you know, I think there's no way you should train each body part more than once a week. Just never worked, and I help a lot of clients, and it doesn't work for them either. Once in a while, there's a freak out there who can do it and respond, but not many people can recover from that much training.
Let's go to Johnny E.T. I've been doing a lot of reading up on insulin and the effects spikes have over the last few days. I now have a lot clearer understanding of it. I'm very surprised how important controlling your insulin levels seem to be to shed those extra few pounds of fat. But something I'm stumped on, they say that the body can take on some of the glucose from carbs and store it in the liver and muscles, right? And that won't turn into fat. So why do guys completely cut carbs when coming into shows?
You got to remember, why does a person burn body fat? Okay? Why would a body mobilize stored body fat? Why? Because the other fuel source in the body, glycogen storage, which occurs, as you said, in the muscles and in the liver, are depleted. So when glycogen is depleted, the body needs energy. So it goes into the stored body fat and pulls those fatty acids out of there and turns them into ATP for fuel. So if you're looking to maximize fat burning, you want to keep your glycogen stores as low as possible, enough to just fuel your workouts, but low, so that your body will dip into the stored body fat to maximize, you know, fat burning effects. If you have full glycogen stores, you're not going to burn as much fat. That's just a given. And there's scientific experimentation that shows this. There's also practical empirical observation. When you lower carbs, you burn fat better. Okay. Also, when you lower carbs, you produce less insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. So when insulin levels are lower, okay, in the body, it primes the hormonal environment to be in a state of fat burning, because when insulin levels are low, GH levels are high. So we don't want high insulin levels when we're trying to maximize fat burning. That just goes without saying. Once again, to repeat, why don't we want high insulin levels? Insulin's a fat storage hormone, and we want low glycogen levels. We want low glycogen so we can mobilize more stored body fat.
Ahmad Esmut wants to know what you think of sesame oil.
You know, there's a lot of good oils out there that you can use and that there's nothing wrong with. Personally, you really can't cook with sesame oil is an omega-6 fat, and polyunsaturated omega-6 fats, if they're heated, they're destroyed, and it ruins their health benefits. I'm not really a big fan of sesame oil anyway, but I happen to be a much greater fan of the highly monounsaturated fats. Oils that contain high amounts of monounsaturates like extra virgin olive oil, macadamia nut oil, avocado oil. If I had to pick an oil to use, those would be the ones I'd go to, because number one, they're great metabolism boosters. Number two, they're very clean burning oils, okay? And number three, they have tremendous heart healthy benefits to the body. So that's my choice. People ask me about coconut oil. They ask me about all kinds of different oils, and coconut oil is a healthy oil, but it's just a fuel source. It doesn't have any essential need in the body. So why waste calories on it? That's just the way I see it. If I'm going to waste calories on an oil, I'm going to waste calories on an oil that's going to do something positive for my body. The reason I favor macadamia nut oil is not just because we sell it at Species Nutrition. We sell it at Species Nutrition because I favor it so much, because you can cook with it. It tastes like butter. It's heart healthy. It's higher in monounsaturated fats than olive oil, and it's got a perfect balanced omega-3 to omega-6 ratio of fats. Because remember, all oils are mixed. They have different types of fats in them. While mac oil is predominantly monounsaturated fat, the small amount of polys it has in it are balanced 1-to-1. So it's a very stable oil. It doesn't oxidize in light. It doesn't go rancid. And to me, if you're going to use fat in your diet, that's a great source.
We have time for about 2-3 more questions. A reminder, at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, special episode of Iron Debate with 4-time Mr. Olympia Jay Cutler right here on rxmuscle.com. Let's go to Dek Niliev. Hey Dave, if my legs are lagging, would it do me any good to split them and do them twice a week, one heavy workout with squats and concentrating on quads, and one lighter workout concentrating on my hams?
If your legs are weak and they don't grow well, train them less often. Don't train them more often. That's what I found. Okay? If you're training them every 7 days now and they're not growing as much, train them every 8 days or every 9 days, but really blast them hard. Do high, full range repetitions. Make sure you're using heavy weight. The more time you take off between a body part, the more rested that body part is, the more the nervous system is rested, the more intensity you can generate when you go into the gym. Just think about when you miss a couple, like a week or two from the gym, you can't wait to get back in that gym. That's the kind of, mindset you want when you go to do that leg workout. You want to say, man, I can't wait to train legs because I haven't trained them for so long. You don't want to say to yourself, oh, I got legs again, my second workout this week. That's not the right mindset to train legs, especially not the right mindset to improve a weak body part.
Let's go to K-Dog's Gym. Dave, any tips on getting rid of tendinitis in the elbows? I've had it for about 1.5 years now, and it's affected my tricep routine. I can't do my favorite exercise because of it. I know the most logical sense would be to take lots of time off and ice, but is there any way to help it without taking time off?
To be honest with you, taking time off is probably the worst thing to do. I mean, yeah, you want to take a day or two off to give it a little break, but if you're constantly having chronic tendinitis in your elbows, more likely than not, it's not due to your elbows. It's probably due to a shoulder issue that's being, referred. The pain is being referred down to your elbow. I would go to a good ART, active release techniques practitioner. You can go to activereleasetechniques.com and you put your zip code in, find a guy in your area, and have them work your shoulder, your arm, that whole chain of muscles that go down, starting with your shoulder. I guarantee after 2-3 treatments of that, your pain will start to go away. I believe with tendinitis, working through it is important, but you got to work through it with the right therapies.
Lewis CW8, Dave, your thoughts on the growing popularity of peptides?
The biggest, I don't want to say scam, but I think it's the biggest, hype and hoopla around some compounds that I've seen of all time. I can't believe how many people think that peptides are the answer to their problems, or how peptides are going to make them look like Ronnie Coleman if they put the right ratios and combinations of them together. All peptides refer to is a class of protein hormones. Growth hormone is a peptide, okay? But they can't sell growth hormone on a peptide website because GH is a prescription drug. So what these peptide sites sell is they sell protein hormones that have not been classified as drugs. Some of them don't. They sell drugs too, but that's the impetus behind it. Now the issue is which peptides are good. Well, I have people telling me, did you hear about this peptide? It burns fat like crazy. I'm like, there's no peptide that burns fat better than growth hormone, okay? This peptide, it builds muscle like insanely. There's no peptide that builds muscle better than growth hormone, all right? So growth hormone is the gold standard. None of those peptides even come close to GH. However, if you have access to them, some of the GHRPs, the growth hormone releasing peptides, which will naturally stimulate GH in your body from your pituitary, they have a little bit of an effect. More likely than not, most people like to use the GHRPs as appetite increasers because they do stimulate your appetite. Melanotan is a great peptide if you want to get tanner. I mean, that definitely works. And the IGF peptides, the long R3 ones, work pretty well if you get a real dose of one. the problem with peptides, like a lot of the underground steroids, is how do you know if the stuff is real? You don't. But remember this. If you take home one message from what I'm telling you right now is there's no magic bullets in those peptides. Nothing is going to do more than steroids and growth hormone does already. Not even close to it. Okay? Once again, if you don't have access to the real stuff, that might be a good second best, but it's certainly not up to spec with the stuff that has been pretty much acknowledged as bodybuilding wares over the years.
We'll take one more as a good one from the YouTube channel Mike Middle Name. What's with alkalizing the body by drinking apple cider vinegar? If I want to alkalize a solution, I would add something with a high pH, not an acid, like vinegar or lemon juice. Please explain.
Hey, all right. I get this question a lot. We're not trying to alkalinize or acidify a solution. It's not like my fish tank where we're going to add acid and we're going to make the pH more acidic, or we're going to add, an alkaline base and make it more alkaline. That's not how it works in the body. In the body, because we produce acid in our stomach, okay, when you put apple cider vinegar into your body, which is a weak acid, it tells your intestinal tract, or it tells your stomach, I should say, produce less stomach acid, okay? So that's how it can. That's why I have people use apple cider vinegar to get rid of acid indigestion. If you have too much acid production in the stomach, taking a weak acid will lower the amount of acid your body puts out, which will solve that problem. However, in Bragg's apple cider vinegar, which contains mother, which is the pulp of the apple, it's the pulp that actually causes the ash of the apple cider vinegar that alkalinizes the body. That has the alkalinizing effect on the body, not the actual apple cider, the acidic part of the apple cider itself. So, two effects: the acidic part of the apple cider will neutralize acidity in the stomach, so you'll get rid of that acid reflux. The ash part of the apple cider vinegar with mother will alkalinize the body.
We close, as we do now, with a poem from our good friend Team Star. Little Miss Fitness got down to business, working the glute bridges out today. Along came a gym bro who tried to catch a free show and frightened Miss Fitness away. Now, Dave, before we wrap things up, I know you wanted to add one little thing, but he does want to know if RX Muscle is going to be at the Toronto Pro Show this upcoming year.
I haven't been there in a bunch of years because of the fact that I can't go to Toronto or to Canada in general. We might have some representation. We haven't really set up the schedule yet. We'll see. If we have a sponsor, we'll definitely be up there. I just want to also bring up two things. Roid test. If you guys have, steroids, anabolic steroids in your house, you've purchased from wherever you've purchased them from, they're underground labs, you're not sure what they are and you want to check, Bill Llewellyn created this terrific, amazing kit. It's called Roid Test. I sell it exclusively at davepalumbo.com. You can purchase it. You can test all your anabolics, and you can decide, and this test will definitively tell you if what you got is what you got. If you got testosterone, it'll tell you if it's testosterone. If you've got Anavar, it'll tell you if it's Anavar. If you've got Dianabol, it'll tell you if it's Dianabol. It tests pills, powders, and liquids. It's super easy. It's fun to use. It's like you're doing a little chemistry experiment. Like I said, they're super reasonably priced. Check them out at davepalumbo.com. Also, on January 30th, Saturday, January 30th, in the RX Muscle Studios here at the offices, I am going to be holding my Secrets to Becoming a Diet Guru course. So far, we only have a couple signups, so this is a good opportunity if you like one-on-one attention from me. It's going to be a smaller class. Sign up at davepalumbo.com. I promise you, I have so many people constantly asking me, look, how do I write diets? I don't know how many carbs, how many grams of fat, proteins. I don't know how to do it. I explain all this. I explain the science of fats, proteins, and carbs, the science of micro and macronutrients, how to combine them, how to create off-season, pre-contest diets, weight loss diets, how to, use performance-enhancing drugs for off-season purposes, pre-contest, what all the anabolic steroids and peptides and protein hormones do, insulin, growth hormone. I go over everything. I give you my playbook. You get an 85-page manual with all my charts and all my graphs and all the stuff I've created over the years that have taken me 25 years to create. You go home with that. You'll know how to do final week prep, detoxification, site injection oils. Look, for those of you out there who want to make a living from this and who love bodybuilding and want to be trainers and want to be people who write diets or coaches in the future, this is better than any college course you'll ever take, okay? I promise you the money that you will spend on this will be so well spent that you will go and tell all your friends to come see this thing. And I'm not being cocky here. I'm being real. I wish someone gave a course like this when I was, coming up in the sport. I'm telling you, everyone who leaves here loves it. Not only that, if you sign up, you get free Taco Joe's lunch. You get Sushi Village, all-you-can-eat sushi buffet at night for dinner. And we give you a huge species nutrition bag of goodies, gym bags, all kinds of products that you can bring home with you. So it's a real fun-filled day. Remember, that's January 30th on a Saturday here in Westbury, New York. You can sign up at DavePalumbo.com.
That said, in about 10 minutes, join us here on rxmuscle.com if you're watching us live right now on our YouTube channel. Jay Cutler, Iron Debate, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on rxmuscle.com. We will see you then.